Architect Bernadette Balaguer of the Architectural Arts and Built Heritage Division.
Thank you, Architect Deco. For our third and final session, our three speakers will be discussing the different social developments that transpired in the Art Deco period, from social emancipation to ways in which we engage with Art Deco today. So how do we now interact and consume the idea of Art Deco and the lasting effects it has had on our heritage and culture? To begin this session, allow me to introduce our first speaker. She is an assistant professor at the Department of History at the Ateneo de Manila University. She teaches various courses on Philippine history. She also teaches visual thinking for communication managers at the Department of Communication. In 2017, she obtained her PhD in history from the University of Côte d'Azur in Nice, France, under the supervision of Javier Wetz de Lamp. Her research interests include Philippine history, history of women, and media history. She was also involved in producing and researching various historical documentary projects. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Catherine Lacson.
Iakyat na unti. Ayan. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is the thing working already? Okay. 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 So good afternoon to everybody. It's been a long day, but I hope that you hang on a little bit longer for the third panel. No? So when Ivan actually talked to me about this symposium, he was telling me na, Kate, do you have anything about Art Deco? I said, I don't have anything about Art Deco. Sabi, how about modernity? I said, ay, marami ako sa modernity. Okay, so I said, I'm going to be talking about modernity today in relation to women because that's basically the topic of choice, no? So this topic I'm going to be presenting to you right now, which is about basically the Muse of Modernity, chronicles basically of the Manilena Co-Ed, came from my dissertation and is now, I'm writing it into a manuscript. And just to give you an idea, since there's only 20 minutes, it's a 70-page chapter that I will now try to put in 7 pages. So I'll just be citing certain salient and relevant points, no, about this specific topic, no? Okay, so let's give it a try. 70 pages to 7 pages. Let's go. Okay. So the Americans' entry to the country ushered in a new era where women had equal access to education as men. These access to education, especially higher education, created a specific image for the women in the periodicals. They became known as co-eds. We take it for granted that we know co-eds now, but you have to remember that it was a different time, right? So the co-ed had many faces. She was the college girl, the athlete, the society debutante, and the flapper. So, just to give you an idea, my sources are all periodicals, all newspapers from 1898 to 1938. So that's where we're coming from, okay? So these various images tantalize the world of the periodical as many articles and permutations of the evolution of the co-ed's image was reported. So who was the co-ed? What was the co-ed? It was assumed that the co-ed was a girl who was enrolled in a college or university. Occasionally, there would be a sprinkling of articles including the high school girl. Because we think of a co-ed right now as college, right? But there was a time in the American period that they were also pertaining to high school women, high school girls, no? As co-eds. But more often than not, when you look at the pieces that were being written during that time, it was stated that the co-ed was literally, basically, the university girl, okay? So there were several schools located outside the capital, which is Manila. Because again, when we talk about the space here, the location that we're talking about, it's Manila, no? So, but most of the prominent ones were actually based in the city. Usually featured were the University of the Philippines, Philippine Women's College, Centro Escolar de Señoritas, Instituto de Mujeres, St. Scholastica's College, and of course, hindi natin makakalimutan, Assumption College, right? Okay. So, let's go to the first representation of the co-ed, which is the modern college girl. Okay. So before the female actually enters into the world of womanhood and motherhood, she passes through the magical phase of adolescence, where she relished the joys of girlhood and maidenhood. It was in this phase that the co-ed actually resided. Her life and times, her ups and downs chronicled meticulously by the periodical. She was tagged as a college girl or university girl, and it usually described her in glowing terms. No? She was the perfect epitome of a modern girl. Independent, a go-getter, an achiever, led a very active lifestyle, and was on equal, well, supposedly, on equal footing with men. She was a girl with beauty and brains. However, the description of her as brainy comes with a double-edged sword, since there were some who described the college girl as unwomanly, ungainly, mannish, unfeminine, homely, and a schoolmarm because of her intelligence. So the college co-ed therefore had to walk this tightrope, no, of epitomizing both beauty and brains. It was important for her to maneuver this walk elegantly, lest they become unwanted if they do not stick to the lines of what this shiny image of a college girl is. No? So the co-ed was busy with extracurricular activities both in and out of the school grounds. She balanced her studies with school events, such as the University Day. She attended women's conferences and brilliantly argued the rights of women. She supported various causes and fundraising events, such as the Red Cross, and the biggest cause during that time was the anti-tuberculosis cause. Okay, so that's that, no? Outside her school life, she watched movies at the cinema. She hung around with friends at socials and mixers, both private and those prepared by social clubs such as the Smiles Club and the Bachelor's Club. The college girl enthusiastically joined picnics, parties, debuts, and excitedly awaited the Manila Carnival. She led a very active lifestyle that was different from the students decades before. And she became the image of advertisements while also being its main target audience. Her sense of self and the image that she represented changed rapidly through the years as she followed fashion and as fashion followed her. Okay. So the co-ed and the connection with fashion, I'll be talking a little bit about it a little bit later when I talk about the debutantes. Because yun yung pinaka-connection no? Okay. So, this image of the modern miss was both accepted and at the same time denigrated. There were those who believed that her sophisticated nature showed an attachment to material things, such as Magno Sazon from the Philippines Free Press, who wrote that the modern co-eds were sophisticates, painted dolls, vampires, gold diggers, or high hats, whose chief ambition in life was to take as much from everybody, especially men, as they could get, and give as little in return as was necessary. And this would even be used by Mr. Perfecto Lagyao at the House of Representatives, who espoused this notion of the co-ed, as he was saying that the co-ed is going to be very bad for you when he was trying to stop suffrage in the House of Representatives. Ironically enough, while he was fighting using the co-ed, no, he also actually married a co-ed. Okay, so there's the stories, no? Okay, so education ushered in modernity, in the process transforming the image of the usual image of a modest, dusky Filipina with her Spanish ways to a more daring and scurrilous Filipino college co-ed tainted with modern American ways. In addition to all of these accolades that defined her and haunted her, the college girl was also described as a very good Catholic girl. Okay? So, especially those coming from the exclusive schools such as Centro Escolar de Señoritas, and again, we know the school, Assumption College. No? So, yan usually talaga yung mga stereotypes. No? This image of the good Catholic girl would need its own antithesis of its immoral, indecent, co-ed image of the flapper, which we'll be talking about a little bit later as well. Okay. So, that's the modern college girl. The next representation that you would usually find in periodicals of a co-ed is the athlete. Okay? And this is actually very brand new again because of the system that system of education that the Americans brought into the country, wherein they also wanted to focus on enhancing physical education or physical culture. So with physical culture, they wanted to point this out because it's important, because the health of the mother will be equivalent to the health of the family. Ganun lang kasimple. There's always that connection, right? So they became interested in baseball, basketball, biking, bowling, golf, shooting, high alay. Interesting, no? Pati high alay, they were playing, right? Mountain climbing, physical education, skating, swimming, tennis, track and field, volleyball, and as you can see here, that's the Philippine, that's the Philippine normal school girls who actually win their volleyball games. No? So that's their outfit. Imagine that outfit when you're playing volleyball. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later. No? So, the lupon, in 1911, the lupon ng kadalagahang Tondo, garbed, wearing their mestiza, posed with some men after playing a game of lawn tennis. I'll show you this later, okay, because it will be connected to the advertisements that were also actually being shown during that time. Okay. The idea of what sport was appropriate for girls became even more fluid as girls tried their hands in supposed sports especially geared for men, such as shooting and gunnery. This was offered at the University of the Philippines as one of the alternatives for co-eds after the acting president, Jorge Bocobo, created ironclad rules restraining students from holding dance parties. Because he was stating na parang puro na lang kayo dance, wala nang nangyayari. Okay, so they said, focus on something else. And so this is what happened, no? So a special sergeant was obtained from the Philippine Scouts to teach the fair sex the art of shooting and shoot with accuracy. So by 1933, there was even a writer who actually documented 4 young ladies scaling Mount Canlaon. So there was nothing impossible, no? So there was literally, we're jumping from the idea of scaling Mount Canlaon, no? There was literally no mountain too, sabi nga ni Diana Ross, no mountain too high to climb and no river too deep to swim for the athletic co-eds of that time. However, the rapid changes in the physical and social activities that the girls were interested in also created a need for a certain change in perspective concerning not just attitude, but perception concerning fashion that hit the core of issues that pitted conservative traditionalists with liberal modernists concerning practicality and morality. Yes. Can you look at that picture over there? As I said, these were women who were playing tennis during that time. And look at what they're wearing. Okay, parang can you now imagine wearing that and playing tennis? I think you'd lose, no? Right? So, the idea of what sport was appropriate, basically, the various advertisements were now actually being presented to the women of the times. No? As you can see here, Squires Bingham is actually selling tennis goods, right? And that's why I said this is such a nice juxtaposition of what was actually happening in reality and what was actually being sold. And you don't know which happened first, the chicken or the egg. But there is that basically symbiosis that was happening during that time. Okay? So, active exercises and sports entailed new, specialized, comfortable clothing that would allow the girls to maneuver easily. It was only, as you can see, right? Finally, they're not wearing their mestizas. They're now wearing basically tennis outfits, no? Then this is the Ochoas. They're very well known during the American period that they were playing tennis together and they were winning, no? So, adopting outfits coming from the West would make it easier for a woman to ride a bicycle, play tennis, volleyball, swim, or run faster in a track or a field. So it's rather inappropriate and impractical when you think about it to wear a mestiza during physical activities, since it was not breathable, it was not light garment, and it didn't allow you maximum movement, no? So the changes steered wide discussions concerning modesty and propriety of the attire, and not all changes in fashion were accepted readily, as these changes became sensational news, especially in the arena of swimming and track and field. Guess why sa swimming? Skin, right? The skin, the showing of the skin. So I called it the bathing suit issue, okay? So, the co-ed slowly became comfortable wearing the bathing suit, but it was considered an outrage to be photographed wearing it. much more so if it was published in the pages of a newspaper. So one can only imagine the furor that ensued when on September 12, 1925, at 5 p.m. at the Palma Natatorium, the public was given a chance for the first time to see the frolicking mermaids of the UP swim team during the swimming exhibition of the University Swimming Club. In the article announcing the event, it was stated that the girls would be clad in bathing attire, and so the public should think nothing of it, especially if one were to compare it with the fashion fads in the US. And they were stating in quotation marks, "So do not be harsh on our fair universitarians." So parang alam na nila na may mangyayari. Be prepared, no? It was unfortunate that even with this precaution, the ensuing photos in the newspapers of the UP mermaids in their swimming attire during the event caused a ruckus as moral crusaders denounced the publication of the photos, while artists on the other side took up the side that the mermaids were actually just basically showing the beauty of the figure, that something was hidden was now that can be seen. So two different perspectives. So this could have been a long, drawn-out controversy had it not been stopped when a picture of distinguished ladies attired in bathing suits, including Mrs. Sergio Osmeña, was also published and stopped the ongoing question of whether the suits were considered immoral and indecent. Imagine if that photo of Mrs. Sergio Osmeña was not shown. This would, you know how it is, right? This would have gone, as we would use it now, viral. No, it would have gone viral. Okay. A Sampaguita article in 1928 written by Afriquita Mirasol tried to present the evolution of the bathing suit. Mirasol stated that women used long pants and long camisoles in 1898 when they wanted to take a dip. The women realized it was difficult to swim with this attire, and that was why in 1900s, they shortened the camisole, but lengthened the sleeves that were short before. No? By 1920, the clothes became risque as the trousers became shorter and the sleeves were altogether removed. By 1927, the writer considered the new evolution of the swimsuit to be too daring even for the modern woman, and she cursed, "Jesus Mariosep, hindi na to bagay para sa kababaihan." Okay, so there's that, no? Even in the Manila Carnival season of 1929, it was marred by the bathing suit issue when Miss Violeta Lopez refused to wear the attire for judging. Because that was the first time that in the Manila Carnival wherein they said, okay, hindi na lang kayo ngayon puro terno or mestizo ang gagamitin. You now have to wear the bathing suit. So she said, Violeta Lopez was supposed to win. And she said, no, I'm not going to wear that. So she lost. Okay. So, these protests, no, even during the 1930s, when we think about it, the bathing suit fashions raised voices of protest as the aquatic attire became even more daring and more abbreviated, supposedly, no. So in our eyes, it's different, no. But you have to remember the eyes of the conservative Filipino during the the early 1900s, no. But these protests did not stop the periodicals from publishing photos of girls wearing bathing suits, as it became more normal to don them for swimming parties during vacations, especially during summer. On the track and field, the women were shouting, "We want pants." Okay. Another fashion debacle was this, no? The controversy happened on whether the girls from the Philippine Normal School should wear shorts during their athletic games. Became fodder for news in 1935. In order to make the short, the official sportswear became a big issue as secret petitions were alleged to have been signed by a goodly number of girls demanding that they should not be utilizing this uniform because of its immodesty. But then, the registrar of the school were saying na, I don't understand the furor because we actually asked all the girls to choose the uniform that they wanted to wear, and they were fine with this because there was mobility when they were running around. So they said, so where did the story come from? No? So it was stated that the protests were coming from certain religious institutions against the shorts. I mean, there'd always be that, right? There'd always be that. So they believed that those who were at the bottom of the petition abolishing them were those that who were not concerned by the innovation, were those that were not actually even going to use the innovation. Because when you think about it, it was a form of technology in sports, right? That you need to actually have clothes, diba? And in fact, nowadays, it's an edge if you have better outfits, right? Ergonomic, etc., etc. No? So there's that. So the clamor for pants did not stop there, as the modern maidens of Occidental Negros would follow in this request to wear pants after seeing the athletic style set by the Manila's girl track and field teams during the National Open Track and Field Championships and other games for girls held at the Rizal Athletic Stadium. Segue later, no? Because we're going to be talking about the Rizal Athletic Stadium as well. No? So we're saying, bakit yung mga Manilenya walang issue? So we should also be able to wear that. No, so there was this whole debacle. Manilenya sila eh. No, it's not about Manila or Negros. It's about us being able to do our sport well. Okay, so there is that. So these were some of, as I said, these are just some points on the thing that 70 pages, so I'm sharing with you, no? So this is the second representation, the athlete. One of the interesting representations actually is the society debutante. Okay. Among all the representations of the co-ed, the periodical was most fascinated with the story of the society debutante. She came from a set of young people that supposedly were born with the proverbial silver spoon. She figured prominently in social pages of periodicals and became the representation to be aspired for. The debutante was the co-ed at her finest, most aristocratic, and most regal. This image of the co-ed was very aspirational since not every co-ed can be a debutante. Because to be a debutante, you need money, right? So there is that, no? So, the debutante seemed to be the epitome of the highest form of what a co-ed could be, for she was the perfect package. She supposedly was intelligent, beautiful, accomplished, athletic, rich, prominent, and well-respected. To afford the lifestyle of the debutante, she very clearly came from the upwardly mobile social classes of the Philippines. The Manila debutante was expected to gracefully traverse society with her good manners, her ideals, and pure morals. And it was in these various social gatherings that she supposedly projected the fine qualities of a real Christian lady. With such superlative descriptions of her, it was obvious that the expectations were very high. Almost all of her moves and escapades were followed in the pages of the of periodicals. Her life conveyed the impression of what romance was made of, full of limousine rides and a host of admirers ready to do her every beck and call. She was considered as the life of every party for dinners, balls, dances, socials. Dami, no? Parang yun ang ginagawa. But that's the life of the society girl, no? Benefit shows, concerts, operas, fundraising events, picnics, field trips, and vacations. Parang hindi tumitigil yung buhay nila, no? It's a non-stop event after event, no? The society girl always had dibs when fair managers were chosen, whether in the Kahirap, the Bachelor's Club, or the YWCA. Their fundraisers were always known as successes. And aside from that, as I said, they were the ones. I was talking about the Red Cross and the anti-tuberculosis charity. They were the ones heading this. It usually came from the society girls. It didn't just come from coming from the demographic of D, CD. A lahat to, usually, no? Her focus in life seemed to be composed of glamorous parties, gallivanting around with a set of trusted friends who understood that the life of a popular and very much vaunted girl in society and finding the right mate for life. Conchita Balmori wrote that a society girl received proposals of marriage at almost every dance she attended. So, therefore, must be wary of false flattery. Okay, may mga pagganon, no? However much the society debutantes expressed their woes in life, in the scheme of things, when you think about it, these are not really problems. No? They're what we call first world problems, right? They're first world problems. So, however, she also had her self-appointed critics who easily made her a target of their barbed innuendos. There was a writer, a journalist named A.B. Legislator, and he would say na, this society girls, their society to the debutants, they're nuances. They do nothing. They can't do anything important. No? So that's what they were saying. So when you think about it, they had all of these critics. But yun nga, ano magagawa mo? That's the life that they led. No? Okay. The right adaptation of Western ideas manifested itself in the rapid adaptation of new fashions. The balintawak and mestiza were relegated to the back of the closet as more foreign styles like the vestida became the daily outfit of choice. I have to use vestida even though Gina was saying vestida a while ago because I have to be true to my sources, and this is what they were writing. No? So this idea was supported by Walter Robb of The Independent, who stated that the Filipino women are very modern. They are laying aside their distinctive native costumes because they wish to dress and be as Western women are. There were those who believed that the mestiza dress enhanced the beauty and charm of the Filipino as she glorified the Maria Clara of the yesteryear. These supporters stated it was the woman's responsibility to protect the heritage of the Filipino and the economy of those who created these works of art by patronizing it through the usage. They were as rabid. So yung laban nung you should use the terno to the you should not use the terno was really very rabid. There was even this one article wherein there was this guy who was basically in Chicago who was stating that it's awful, it's ugly, you should not use it. It's as simple as that. Okay. So just give me time, I'm going to finish this up, okay? So, so how did the society debutant actually find the way to quiet this debate? So how did they do it? They actually use everything. Because in the morning, they would utilize the Western styles. And in the afternoon, they would either use their ternos or these new wonderful gowns. No? So that's what's going to be happening during the time. And the biggest thing that you would actually be very interested in is the coming out party of the debutante. She's not a debutante for nothing. That's why the debut was very important, okay? So the biggest event that the society girl looked forward to is her coming out party or her debut when she turned 18. Only her wedding supersedes this big event. This was a time when parents formally introduced their daughter to society and highlighted their best qualities. This was her supposed exit from girlhood and official entrance to adulthood. And one of the biggest things that she needed to do for this one, find a husband. Okay, that was that, no? So, it's not so that they would say that even after the preparation of the trousseau, they would actually be spending around 1,000 to 5,000. It's either a tea party, a dinner party, a dance party. But at the end of the day, they were saying that to ensure the success of a debut, because the party is just the party, the debutant should shine. Okay, should sparkle. And how to do this? She had to now be the one to basically do the smooth interpersonal relationships. Because at the end of the day, the biggest social triumph is for her to actually, after prepare her debut, she can then prepare her wedding, which was the goal, okay? So, no more time. Okay, so the thing is, I will now go. Okay, this is our interesting things, because a while ago when I was watching online, Dr. Lico was actually stating that one of the best examples of Art Deco is basically when you look at the flapper. And this is one of those things, no? So what is the flapper, actually, no? So the external manifestation of modernity, the extreme external manifestation of modernity was supposedly the flapper, okay? So she was masculine, she had bobbed hair, she had shingled hairdo, she wore clothes such as trousers, waistcoats, jackets, ties that were too boyish, even accentuating it with a monocle occasionally. Okay, so these were the issues, no, that would be happening for the flapper. No? That, again, another interesting thing from the graphic. No? So one of the biggest issues that the flapper would actually be facing is to bob or not to bob. So there would be issues wherein, should I shorten my hair? And there would be some people who are saying, we need to shorten our hair because now we are actually active women who have so many things to do and we do not have 2.5 hours to just fix our hair. But then there would be always some people who, coming from the traditional aspect, would be saying that, but you look like a man when you don't have long hair. And you have to protect that because that is basically what beautiful looks like. Okay. So, as Simplico del Rosario said, if I were a young man, I would never marry a girl with bobbed hair. And in fact, it became so interesting that there was a point that there was even a Samar House representative named Pascual Azanza who introduced a bill seeking to levy an annual tax of 30 pesos upon any girl of 15 years and over who sported cropped hair. So while this was actually being decided, no, in the House of Representatives, tumaas yung dami ng pumupunta sa barbershop. Because everybody got their haircut. They were saying it's like a revolution of sorts, no? So, but then afterwards, sometime in the end of the 1920s, no, when it was sort of dying down, people started sort of growing their hair again, no? Okay. So, the clothing or lack of it. I'll just go through this. As you can see, during the Spanish period, bawal makita ang legs. American period, legs, legs, legs. Everywhere, legs, right? And in fact, this was even a competition. Who had the prettiest legs, okay? And they would even say that the flappers were actually doing sacrilege in Antipolo, when they do the pilgrimage in Antipolo, because instead of wearing the usual balintawaks or what they would do is they'd actually wear short skirts, and then they would actually have stockinged feet na may drawing. So sabi nila parang that's so not right. And in fact, there was even a Filipina, they were saying that went to Rome, actually wore short clothes and did not have stockings. But the thing is, before supposedly the journalist had the time to photograph her, nawala na siya. They were saying it was a bet, no? So again, they were saying flappers, flappers. But then there would be people who would be saying, I'm a modern girl, yet I am not modern. If you were saying to me that I'm a flapper, because I'll never be a flapper. Okay. So, a woman without modesty no longer inspires, she provokes. She no longer dignifies, she perverts. In your endeavor to be popular, do not be flappers, gross, and venal. Do not destroy. Be noble and inspiring in your modest and pure womanhood. Because there were those who were saying that it doesn't necessarily follow that if you're a flapper, you're not religious. Because there were people who were called religious flappers during that time as well. But then there came laws wherein you cannot go into the church if you're wearing flapper clothes. So there were all of these issues, no? So, in summary, by 1938, the co-ed was a regular staple in periodicals, and she was now more of like, not natural na. Now everybody was sort of, it's normalized that there's a co-ed. And there seemed to be a lesser denigration concerning her fashion style, as campus fashions were now tagged as simple and smart with the dual role of utility and attractiveness. Materials for dresses range from serviceable cotton, printed and plain, to light crepes, dark and neutral tones preferably. So footwear called for a low-heeled sandals or Oxfords. Spiked heels are considered too wearing. And Manila co-eds would now be known for their matter-of-fact style of dressing. So there would now be a love for the modern college girl, such as those of Daisy Ontiveros, Lidia Zulueta, Caridad Paterno, Josefa Teves. Again, they were still known, co-eds during the time were still known, coming from the Buena de Familias, right? And maybe some from the middle class. And so, there was, as pointed out in summary, there was a change from that Spanish Filipina. She now became an American Filipina, in a way, right? And in this ever-changing environment, it just shows you that the Manilanya Co-ed confronted a set of contesting issues that were concerned not only with the changing morality of a new generation, but more so of the behavior that went with it. She became the epitome of what was both good and bad in modernity. Some of her images were more polarizing than others. Her imagery became an important venue for the discussion of changes in the life of the women in the country and the opportunities that opened to them. It was here where the co-ed was given the unwritten mandate and somewhat unfortunate luck to become models of the independent modern women who at the same time were called to preserve the traditional delicacy of the Filipino women. Tradition, morality, modernity. A rather challenging feat for any woman at any age. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that enlightening talk on Manila Co-eds, Dr. Kate. And for second presenter for this session is a lawyer and environmental planner, and is a president CEO of Deco Incorporated, a sustainability consulting firm which has completed the National Tourism Development Plan 2023 to 2028, the Conservation Management Plan of Intramuros, and the Sugar Heritage Trail for Western Visayas, among many other plans and studies. He earned a master's in environmental policy from Yale University, law and political science degrees from the University of the Philippines, trained in urban heritage with the Getty Institute and Think City Malaysia, and recently completed his term as president of the Heritage Conservation Society Philippines and as a founding trustee of the Southeast Asian Cultural Heritage Alliance. Please welcome our attorney, Mark Evidente.
Good afternoon. Okay. I feel so tall with this podium because there's an extra step. Okay. Good afternoon. So I'm going to talk, this presentation this afternoon is a story about saving the sports complex. And why it's particularly important. Of course, Ivan asked me to speak about it. No? But why it's particularly important is because there's still very little appreciation that the modern is already heritage, right? It seems easy to get churches or ancestral homes that are, from more than 100, 200 years old. It seems easy to get those declared as heritage, okay? Well, relatively easier, no? Not saying it's been perfect. But the modern remains a challenge. No? And I think the experience of Rizal Memorial Sports Complex is something at least that gives us hope that this can be different in the future. No? Because it bears stressing that the modern, as the title of our whole forum this afternoon, no, is already 100 years old, right? And so if we talk about what is heritage, we have under the law that line of 50 years and older. 50 years is already 1975, right? Okay. So imagine everything martial law downwards is already heritage, right? And but that sense of what is and isn't heritage, especially in this modern era, is still poorly appreciated. No? So I'm going to talk about, I'm going to go over this story of how the sports complex was saved. Okay. So, yes. Oh, wala pa. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Oh. Okay. Yan, naka-slide. Naka-slide show na yan. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay. So, we, of course, being a lawyer, have to start from the law. Wait, why is it going on auto? Okay, okay, there we go. The Rizal Memorial Sports Complex is a bit of a strange animal because normally the building follows the land. But it's a strange animal in the sense that the land on which the sports complex stands is owned by the city of Manila. But because of Republic Act 6847, in the last sentence, In particular, the management and full control of all the land, buildings, equipment, and other improvements thereon of the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex and the Quezon City Velodrome shall be transferred to the Commission. Note, it only says management and full control, not ownership. Not ownership. So you have this strange situation where the actual use, control, management of the sports complex is given to one entity, when in fact the land is actually owned by the city of Manila. So we have this strange animal in this situation. No? And then in 2016, towards the end of the year, we have this. No? It says in this news article that the city government of Manila will develop the 11-hectare Rizal Memorial Coliseum into a commercial center, Mayor Joseph Estrada said yesterday. Estrada said the city government is forging a joint venture with businessman and developer Ricky Razon for the construction of the commercial center, which will have a mall and cinemas. Yet another mall right beside existing malls in that area. Okay. Now, because of that, so of course our dear friend Ivan wrote the National Museum to petition that the sports complex be declared and saved. No? So this letter, Ivan wrote that built on the grounds of the historic Manila Carnival, the RMSC was constructed in 1934 for the Far Eastern Championship Games, the precursor of the modern Asian Games. It was the site of fierce fighting during the Battle of Manila in 1945, and the complex was reconstructed in 1953, and it hosted the Second Asian Games in 1954. The RMSC has also hosted several editions of the Southeast Asian Games, as well as countless national sporting, social, and even musical events. No? Because RMSC at this time was the main open space venue that we had. No? So any kind of gathering that you wanted to gather thousands of people together, you would use RMSC. No? And so Ivan writes further, no? Apart from its significant historical sports pedigree, the RMSC also served as training ground for notable Filipino sports icons such as Gabriel Flash Elorde, Rolando Navarrete, Lydia de Vega, Eric Buhain, and even hosted international sports icons such as the American baseball player Babe Ruth. No? But of course, we're here also to talk about Art Deco. No? So, Ivan underscores that the complex was designed by architect Juan Arellano in the same Art Deco style as the Metropolitan Theater, which has been declared a national cultural treasure. The RMSC is the single biggest sports facility done in the Art Deco style within the country and possibly the only one in the ASEAN region. It exhibits Arellano's trademark design of incorporating local elements with modernist motifs, which resulted in a unique Manila or Filipino style of Art Deco architecture. What you'll see in this letter is one of the ways that we are able to save or at least start talking about what makes our Art Deco sites valuable, significant to us as a nation. No? Because if we were to simply talk about Art Deco, the beauty of Art Deco, the symmetry, the design elements, no, it would probably not be much appreciated by the general public. No? Maybe we have to go further that, or maybe because, like in my case, no, in history studies, both in high school and in college, no, we never got as far as the American period because we kept talking about the Spanish period for all of so many months in the semester, right? Okay. So really that modern period in our history is poorly appreciated. No? So what we see in trying to preserve and protect our Art Deco sites is really is not only to explore the Art Deco elements in it, but also to explore what makes it really important, significant in the story of a community or in the story of our country. Now, that said, lumabas man yung press release ng kabila, no? Okay, so Razon says, the Razon Group plans to renovate Rizal Memorial Coliseum, add malls. No? So you see a change in the strategy that they're going to renovate the sports complex. No? So now they're starting to become aware that there's probably a heritage issue here. So nag-adjust ng language nila kung anong gagawin. No? But look, within the walls and facade of Rizal Stadium will rise contemporary buildings that will house modern offices and commercial areas, no? Run by smart technologies. But you can imagine now, in other words, from the way it's framed, no? Within the walls and facade of the stadium, so imagine that the whole open field and track oval in the middle, that's where they're going to put the condos and hotels and things like that. No? Okay. Now, next. But also at the same time, no, on the other side, public interest is also accumulating. No? Someone launches a Save the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex on change.org. No? And then we in the Heritage Conservation Society at this time develop our own position on this matter, and we submit this position to both the National Historical Commission and the National Museum. Okay. Now, what did we say in our position? So first, Manila residents deserve affordable sports facilities and public open spaces, even as a new national sports complex will be built in Clark. The Rizal Memorial Sports Complex should remain as a sports complex and should be dedicated to the people of Manila. No, so we're emphasizing here that there is a public policy that we have to protect in protecting the sports complex. It must be emphasized that RMSC is one of the last surviving pre-war structures in the city, and it has borne witness to the scourge of war and some of the grandest events in our history. It remains an important landmark, not only for the city of Manila, but for the thousands of athletes who have called it home for many generations. It deserves to be preserved as a sports facility and a heritage landmark dedicated to the people of Manila. We often call our national athletes heroes, right? And if we talk about our heroes, is this not hallowed ground of our heroes, right? This is literally and figuratively where the blood, sweat, and tears of our heroes is imbued into the walls and foundations of this structure, right? So if you want to honor our heroes, should we not honor the structures that develop and build our heroes? So, responding in a way to the proposal of Mr. Razon, no? That although the proposed preservation of the facade is a necessary first step, it is merely a token gesture to conservation. Conservation requires understanding why the structure is important to the people and how that importance can be communicated to future generations. We can think perhaps, no, that the effort to save RMSC, to connect RMSC to the legacy of our sporting heroes, might have led to shaping our current crop of Olympians and all the medals that they have earned. No? That it's not necessarily about, oh, we have an old stadium, we need to tear it down and build something new. But really, it's about supporting our athletes properly. Right? Okay. Now, the open spaces and sports fields are integral to the identity of the space as a venue for sports and events. No? Because the very nature of the place is about sports, and that is where we trained our sports heroes. So you don't just tear it down and just leave a marker that, oh, this was where we trained our sporting heroes, right? Because if we're looking to the future, we have to continue that legacy of training our heroes into the future. No. Adaptive reuse can be applied, but only to improve its original intent. No. Proposals to develop the property must include keeping all the public spaces, especially the football and baseball fields. Commercial activities can be built into the facility, but without diminishing open spaces where people can engage in sports, participate in events, in concerts, and enjoy themselves. We agree that the City of Manila should pursue a path of redevelopment for the city, But it should also keep in mind that there are other public values it must protect and nurture. A healthy environment and the preservation of our culture and history must go hand in hand with economic development. Then there's also the environmental argument. No? Redesigning the Harrison district, because that's how it was called. No? That's why it's called Harrison Plaza, right? That area. No? We have a Harrison Plaza. Has it been demolished already? I've not. Yes. Okay. Okay. Harrison Plaza, and historically was really a plaza, right? Okay. So redesigning the Harrison district to generate fresh investment, precisely anchored around a revitalized Rizal Memorial Sports Complex and expanded park space in that area, will create a more balanced environment and progressive environment for the people of the city. No? Study after study has shown in terms of urban redevelopment is that property values increase if there are more public spaces around it. You put parks, you put walkways, you put shaded areas, no? You put sports facilities, cultural facilities, land values go up. No? So if you really want to think about community impact, then you actually preserve it and you engage the people more in using that space. No? Building high-rise buildings and malls in that district will only aggravate the traffic and the stress on public infrastructure, from water and power to sewage and drainage in that area. No? Remember, if you put a high-rise building in an area that is just planned for 3 or 4 stories, imagine all those extra people using water, power, bringing cars. No? All that extra population brings an extra demand on infrastructure. No? So that is something that would need to be planned on. In other words, it just turns into money for the developer, but it reduces the actual impact and benefit on the community around it. Historically, the Harrison district itself was intended as a park to manage flooding in Malate. You will notice that in the park, you actually have several esteros in that area in order to drain that part of Manila. Burnham, in designing Manila, specifically left that plaza there to aid in the drainage. And so now you wonder why that part floods all the time. Because the water's nowhere to go, right? Okay. So, historically, the Harrison district itself is intended as a park to manage flooding in Malate while creating a civic space to anchor a pleasant and integrated community. Forgetting the historical function of an area leads precisely to the problems we see in that area today. Manila needs open and green spaces, not more concrete slabs, because climate experts warn that the Metro Manila is now a heat island because of the limited green and open spaces. This results in stronger downpours and deeper floods, and even small cyclones, which happened just a few months ago in the city. So you see here a design for the plaza in that area. Now the park this one is Juan Arellano's plan for that area in 1933. No? But the point here is that in trying to find out what is significant in a building, we can often fall in love with the things that we love and appreciate. And so if you're an Art Deco enthusiast, you might be so focused with all these details about the beauty of the building. No? But oftentimes when we have to ask government to step in and save something, what is the public value? No? What is the public value? And of course, yes, aesthetics has a public value. No problem about that. No? But in trying to really motivate government to devote its attention and resources to save something, you have to put all these other values in the story. Talk about history, community impact, urban development, environmental development. These are just some of the values that we can bring to the story in order to save something, to really tell why saving something is really worth the attention of the public. And because of all these things, no, the other players started getting involved. the House, the lower house, the Congress, no, started a probe to turn historic Manila Sports Complex into a commercial district, no? And then we also had then Congressman Mansour Del Rosario, no? Of course, as an athlete himself, speaking up to save Rizal Memorial Sports Complex. Del Rosario said that the facility built in 1934 holds a special place in many athletes' hearts. Lahat silang mga Olympians, ayaw nilang mawala ang Rizal Memorial Sports Complex, Del Rosario said. And this is not for me or Chairman Butch. As an athlete, the move to save the Rizal Sports Complex is already for our children and grandchildren. So you see already, the narrative is building up. The stakeholders are coming in and speaking out to protect that which is important for them, but also for future generations. And then, kabig naman. Okay. Manila government denies plans to demolish RMSC. Maski na proposal to develop po yung Rizal Memorial Stadium, ay wala po. Nothing concrete at the moment. Chismis pa lang po yan. Okay. So they're already adjusting the narrative, no? Okay. And then, former mayor, former president, Erap, no, says, he wants to push through with RMSC conversion, no? And he says, oh, sigurado yun. The Manila mayor said when asked if the city government would still reclaim the historic property amid the stiff opposition of heritage advocates, prominent sports personalities, and different sports organizations. No? So you see how the narrative is changing. There's even a lack of certainty in what their point is, no? In what should be done with the sports complex. No? Okay. And then, finally, okay, the National Historical Commission saves RMSC from demolition. Okay. Here is the declaration from the NHCP. Okay, I'll zoom in. Okay, so first, declaring the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex in Malate, Manila as a National Historical Landmark. Okay, so let's go to the third paragraph now. Whereas during the American period, sports was integrated in the school curriculum, and the Department of Public Recreation established playgrounds in different parts of Manila to meet the recreational needs of the student population and the general public. So the National Historical Commission, of course, because its mandate is history, is talking more about the context also in which RMSC was built. The incorporation of sports as part of the educational program. Whereas as Filipinos became adept in sports, the government deemed it proper that Manila, as the showcase of the modernization project of Americans, should have a large-scale sports complex capable of hosting international sports events. Whereas a Playground and Recreation Commission created by Governor General Leonard Wood in 1921 to promote the wholesome play and recreation throughout the islands, voted to construct a ₱1 million stadium and seating capacity for 30,000 spectators in Harrison Park, a 10-hectare site ceded to the city of Manila. And then we talk about all the different historical events in terms of sports that RMSC was involved in. 1934 Far Eastern Games. Then it also saw World War II, no? And you could even find, you can even go to YouTube and you can find video clips from this era on the movement of American troops as they were entering Manila and moving towards, of course, Intramuros, no? And they were passing through, the RMSC and then fortifying it also as part of their military movements, no? Okay, and it was rebuilt thereafter, hosted various events, no? And then we talk about the Art Deco significance, no? Its style of architecture, the curving walls, double band of moldings, beveled corners with nail heads and ornaments, okay? And then therefore, the NHCP declares that the RMSC is a National Historical Landmark. Okay, and then also the National Museum follows shortly afterwards in declaring the site an important cultural property. Okay. Now, change message. Okay. Razon vows to preserve RMSC in a 5 billion development. Okay, so he vows to preserve it. Okay, no, okay, we'll preserve it. No? And then so our rebuttal. No? So we have a number, we issued another statement, of course, thanking all the stakeholders, thanking, of course, the leadership of NHCP and NM in protecting the site. No? But last paragraph, we thus now call upon the City of Manila and prospective developers of the site to present their plans for redeveloping RMSC to the cultural agencies and urge them, as required by law, to take into consideration the spirit of the place that embodies RMSC's historical and cultural significance, that it is a civic open space for nation building through sports, as well as its social, health, and environmental values in the fabric of the country and the City of Manila itself. This is an important part because oftentimes when a developer might come in, they'll say, okay, we'll adjust, we'll save something. No. But there, it should be emphasized that if the site is declared, they should present their plans for evaluation with the cultural agencies. No? So this is another statement that we prepared together with Ecomos Philippines. No? Okay. Having thus outlined the statements of significance of the site, it is the duty of the cultural agencies, consistent with international best practices, to require the preparation of a conservation management plan by qualified experts under its control and supervision to ensure that the significance of the site is respected and preserved. A CMP should be prepared prior to detailed site, architectural, and engineering development planning, and the CMP should in fact guide and provide the parameters of such development planning. Okay? So, in other words, in coming up with these statements, we try to remind the stakeholders, no, we can't accept people's word at face value. There is a process in the law that once it is declared, if they do want to develop it, they can, but there are parameters and plans that they have to follow. No? And then, of course, the Philippine Sports Commission also says, no, after 1 year of negotiations, it was not the price, but it was more of preserving what RMSC really stands for, said PSC Chair Butch Ramirez. Razon then drops his bid for Rizal Memorial. And then, of course, we had the rehabilitation of Rizal to cost 2 billion. And then it was then rehabilitated, and it was opened, when was that? It was a bit before the pandemic, like 2019. No? And it was rehabilitated, updated, and thus we have the conserved Rizal Memorial Sports Complex that we have today. Thank you everyone for your time this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you so much, Attorney Evidente, for enlightening us about how we saved the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex. So before proceeding to the third speaker, we will be having a 5-minute health break, and we will resume at 4:40. Thank you. And that concludes our quick break. We are now on the third presentation of our third session, after which we will have a final panel discussion for this symposium. Last but definitely not the least, allow me to introduce our final speaker for this symposium. He is a travel professional and a special guest curator of the upcoming exhibition Art Deco, Design and Modernity in the Philippines, 1925 to 1950, scheduled to open in October at the National Museum of Fine Arts. He has done extensive documentation and archival research on a wide range of Art Deco-related topics, including architecture, industrial design, graphic arts, and social history. Sir Ivan, is the co-author of the Deco Filipino, Art Deco Heritage in the Philippines, 1925 to 1950, published in 2020. Since 2015, he has lectured locally and overseas on Philippine Art Deco heritage and traveled around the world for Art Deco-themed experiences. Please welcome Mr. Ivan Mandi.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm the last speaker, so thank you to those who have stayed on at this point. And I hope, well, thank you to our wonderful speakers this morning. I hope you all enjoyed our program for today, okay? Anyway, so how do we turn this on? Okay, so, most of what have been discussed is Art Deco in relation to our history, to our architecture, to our past, basically, okay? Well, my lecture is about Art Deco in our present time, okay? So, as you have seen, Art Deco truly cuts across multidisciplinary design expressions in our history. And you saw that in the various topics related to architecture, fashion, industrial objects, art of that era. So, since I'm the last speaker, my lecture will not be about the past, but rather Art Deco in our present time. Specifically, how the spirit and the legacy of this style is being manifested in our consciousness, in the pop culture, and in the travel industry in the 21st century, basically in our time. Okay, so a while ago you have learned, how the origins of this style, how it started in Paris, and spread across continents. I'd like to answer that question of someone who asked, how did Art Deco come here? Well, basically through many things, right? The pensionado architects, literature, film, okay? And, this style was very much in vogue for a quarter of a century. So since it started in 1925, it spread around the world until it became popular until just about after the Second World War. So by the 1950s, Art Deco was now in decline, and a new trend was popping up, something that today we call as the mid-century style. So yan, usong-uso rin sa atin ngayon yan, di ba? Mid-century style. Now, as much as Art Deco was ended 50 years ago, Art Deco inspiration is still very much hovers in our midst, in our time, no? And continues to live on in our pop culture, no? So, for example, okay, if I ask anyone, a Tito, millennial, Gen Z, do you know something about the Art Deco? And can you define what is Art Deco? They'll probably give me a, what is that look? However, if I show them this, one word, Gatsby. Ay, alam na yan. Okay? Gatsby is that very popular Hollywood movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio that was based on a novel by an American novelist called F. Scott Fitzgerald. So it was written in 1920, published in 1925, and this movie epitomized everything that was everything luxurious, everything fashionable, no? Everything attractive about the American Art Deco era. Western flapper girls, no? Dancing, movies, right? So I just learned a while ago from the talk of Miss Kate that our ideas of flapper here was very, very different from the Western flapper that you see, okay? And as you notice, in Christmas parties today, like in those photos, the flapper theme is still very much in vogue in our time. That even Mayora Joy, as you can see at one point in one of her Christmas parties in Quezon City, sported a flapper theme. So you see the magic of Art Deco, no? Sinabi lang Gatsby, oy, alam na lahat, no? So everybody dressed up in that era, which was very, very much part of the Art Deco age, okay? So another movie that might be recognizable to titos and titas of a certain generation in our audience. Oh, ayan. Sino nakakaalam ng palabas na yan? Miami Vice, okay? Which was a series, an American series that became a hit in 1984. That's around 41 years ago. And you look at that text, no? This is 1984, but yung text niya is very Art Deco. And that series, no, starring this handsome duo named, sino? Ayan, ano bang pangalan niya? Si Don Johnson, di ba? You know, this series was actually set in Miami, in the United States. And Miami was a very, very Art Deco city. Okay, so it really cashed in on the romance and the architecture of the Art Deco in a very contemporary manner. No? Again, it was a very big hit, no? This Miami Vice. And in the 1990s, there was a movie called Rocketeer, 1991. It was a Walt Disney movie. It's an action movie, and the theme was very 1930s as well. Okay, so you look at the graphic design, no? Mukha siyang ano, I mean, straight out from the 1930s. Okay. So for our younger set, however, the Gen Zs, no, you only need to go to Netflix to catch this, no, cartoon series. In fact, one of my favorites, The Flash. No, you have this speedster guy who's running around Central City, no, fighting crime, and using his speed power to save the world. Okay. And in another case, of course, we also have the Cape Crusader, Batman. No? So you can still find that in Netflix. And if you notice, the aesthetics of these cartoon series actually borrows a lot from the Art Deco era. Okay? In particular, if you look closely at Batman, no, the cartoon series, it has a very dark and film noir character. No? And if you look at Gotham, it kind of feels movie-like. It's a metropolis, but it's not the metropolis that we know today. It's basically how they saw the future in the 1930s. Okay? As one of the producers said, it's like the 1930s left and never left, and we carried on to the 21st century. So basically, when the producers were doing Batman, they had the Art Deco aesthetic in mind and just sort of translated it to a modern language today. Okay? Well, locally, we have movies like, ayan, Si Pulang Araw. Okay? Of course, if you watch this series in Netflix, it is a World War II series. So a lot of the set that they used has the references to the Commonwealth era. And Commonwealth era equals Art Deco age. Okay? Now, so let's move on to travel. Okay, yeah, the Art Deco era. Okay, it was really the starting of the golden age of travel. No, and why? Because simply there was this thing called speed. No, everything was suddenly faster. You had more modern trains. You had more modern cruise liners, no? And the airline industry was beginning to take flight, no? So before that, when you traveled trans-Pacific or transatlantic, you used the cruise ship. But by the late 30s, we began having planes, and planes provided a speed that no cruise ship could match, right? You could be in London to Paris in 75 minutes, diba? So anyway, so that was the golden age, no? Now, as the title of my talk goes, it's called Deco Destination. I'm going to talk about how Art Deco is actually manifested in the travel industry, since I am a travel professional, no? And basically, as defined, Deco destination is a type of bespoke travel where people explore cities and buildings with rich Art Deco design heritage, okay? So think of it as like bird watching. You know, there are people who love birds, and they would travel to far places just to look at birds. Well, Art Deco nuts are kind of like birds. Now, we also travel to far places and spend sometimes crazy amounts of money just to appreciate and look at Art Deco buildings and stuff from that era. No? So when you think of Art Deco destination, well, you don't really think of Art Deco destination, but when you think of destinations or urban destinations, no, there are more famous cities than the others. And like it or not, one of the most famous and perhaps dreamt of cities that everybody wants to go to is New York City in America. No? So, you know, every time you go to, if you ever find yourself in New York, even if you're not a fan of Art Deco, for sure, you will make a beeline to the Empire State Building to the left. No? That very, very famous New York icon where King Kong actually fell to his death, among other things. No? Well, that is Art Deco. And very much alive and very much, an icon. No? In fact, it's so famous that it actually attracts 4 million tourists a year. And this is one building. For whatever reason that they go, movies, design, Art Deco, it's an Art Deco building. No? So in the middle, you have another famous New York Art Deco icon, the Chrysler Building, which unfortunately is not open to the public. And to the right is another Art Deco complex called the Rockefeller Center, which is really more of a entertainment and shopping destination. Again, all in the style of Art Deco. No? So moving on. So we have another city in the United States. We have Miami, which is in the state of Florida. Okay. Well, Miami actually has an Art Deco district, which has around 800 Art Deco structures. Now, unlike the Art Deco in New York, the ones in Miami are more tropical. They're not as skyscraper as New York. They're more 3, 4, 5 stories, no? But it does have a huge collection. In fact, currently the biggest collection of Art Deco or concentration of Art Deco in any locality with 800 buildings, which were all saved from the wrecking ball in the 1970s. So they actually had their conservation issues. At one point, everybody wanted to tear them down. And remember, 1970s was the period when Art Deco architecture was not yet seen as heritage enough. No? 1930s, 1970s, 50 years. No? But they saved it, and they are now earning millions. No? Well, in particular, that area called South Beach. No? So you always hear that, South Beach, Florida. Yan. Okay? Of course, it helps that you have movie magic to help you promote the place, like Miami Beach, diba? So every year, Miami holds an Art Deco weekend. So again, it's a tourism activity that celebrates things Art Deco, from buildings to cars to fashion to all with a beachfront setting. No, they actually, it's a weekend. No, so dinadayo yon. In short, it's a festival. Okay. Closer to home, we have the biggest city in China, which is Shanghai. So like New York had her heyday in the 1920s and the 30s that resulted to the flourishing of the Art Deco style. No? So if you're ever a first-time visitor to this city, you'll probably end up in that area by the waterfront called the Bund. So it's this huge street with beautiful and majestic colonial-style building, no? And a lot of the buildings there are actually in the Art Deco, including the one with the green tower. It's called the Peace Hotel. No? So it's the most famous, Art Deco hotel in Shanghai. No? And today the term "old Shanghai" is still used today to hark back to the romance of the 1930s, when the city was labeled as the Paris of the East or the whore of the Orient, depending on who you talk to. No? But you see that attraction, no? That imagery of Shanghai as that city, in the cosmopolitan city in the 1930s. No? So today, much of the Art Deco heritage remains, no? And it's still very much part of the everyday Shanghainese lifestyle. Okay? Then we have this one. This is in, of all places, Mumbai, no? Or Bombay, India. No? You'd be surprised how the extent of Art Deco legacy around the world, and you sometimes don't expect them in places like India, no? Well, Mumbai actually managed to do one thing that a lot of cities did not. They managed to turn their Art Deco district into a World Heritage Site. No? So that complex where you have Art Deco buildings in India, it's actually called the Victorian Gothic and Art Deco and some, from that period. No? So it's three different styles reflecting the three evolutions of architecture in India's biggest city. No? So these are just some of the few examples of cities that have worked to conserve and actually cash in their Art Deco heritage. There's actually more of that, okay? So, okay, what's next? So today, apart from being a very scholarly and academic topic, Art Deco is still very much out there in many cities, and you find them, that the heritage of this style is kept alive by various Art Deco organizations throughout. No? So you usually find them in cities with significant Art Deco heritage, most of them in North America, in Europe, there's some in South America, there's two in Asia, no? In Mumbai and in Shanghai. And they're mostly nonprofit and anchored on advocacies, including conservation and education. So they also organize events that celebrate Art Deco heritage of their localities. Okay? Unfortunately, we don't have such one in Manila. No? However, they organize talks. No? They invite people to talk. So this was in Chicago, where I got to talk on Manila's Art Deco heritage. No? They find it exotic, right? That in this far-flung city that they probably never heard of, right? That we actually have rich Art Deco heritage, no? So they organize events like Art Deco weekends, no? Which attracts a lot of people. And that's where people love to show up in their 30s era costumes, bring out their vintage car collections or bring out their vintage watch collections and just show it to everyone. It's like a cosplay, but 1930s themed. And these are big income tourist earners because people go and people spend for it, okay? Well, I've attended one of these Art Deco weekends, no? So basically, I went to New York for 4 days and just explored, joined the program that they did, no? That included walking tours, and New York has so much Art Deco. And then we also had visits to private collections. So this was somebody who collected 1930s bakelite radios. And he has a separate apartment to keep his collection. Now, so when you join Art Deco weekends, you get special access to things like that. Now, so they're so big into it. Of course, there's the food part because you eat in nice places, no? So yeah, so that's the tourism aspect, okay? Now, all of these organizations that I showed you, they belong to one big umbrella group called the International Coalition of Art Deco Societies. Okay, so they're basically the mother of the all Art Deco organizations. And one of the big things that they do every 2 years is to host the World Art Deco Congress. No? So it's like the beauty pageant. They pick a city every 2 years, and these cities get to host it. It's usually a 1-week affair. Now, 1 week is very long. No? Combining walking tours, architecture tours, lectures, dining experiences, no, private collection tours, no. So they've had it in many places, in many cities with rich Art Deco heritage, including Havana, Cuba. No, they had it in Melbourne, Australia, in Argentina. No, well, I was fortunate to be able to attend one, which was in Shanghai 10 years ago. No, which really started my Art Deco reawakening. Because when I joined this Congress, I was suddenly in the middle of people who talked the same language, who wanted to see the same things, no? And they were all going giddy with Art Deco stuff, no? So I joined it for 1 week, and again, it was a week worth of fun activities, no? Walking tours, so see people lining up to look at that streamlined modern house, no? We ate in period restaurants, no? Because the theme is 20s, 30s. So even the dining experiences, they would really choose places which had those themes, okay? And we had a ball, okay? Like at the Peace Hotel, no? To cap off this activity, okay? So yeah, so that was 10 years ago. And after that, I came back refreshed and started many things here. Oh, we also have dress-ups in these events now. So this is a couple from Australia, and this event was 1 week. So every day in 1 week, they would change their costume. So imagine how much clothes they had to bring for that week. And these are like, very period wear of that era. No? So mag-asawa yan. No? So anyway, so moving on. So the next Art Deco Congress will be in Paris because it's the 100th year in October. And it's going to gather again about 200, 300 people, to talk about this thing, okay? Now, since we don't have an Art Deco society, I thought I'd just do things that I can do. So when I came back from Shanghai, one of the first things I did was to do a documentation of our Art Deco heritage. No? Well, thank you to NCCA, who actually gave me a grant to document buildings. So I went around the country, largely in Luzon and the Visayas and to Negros, and went around, documenting buildings, interviewing people, not just buildings, houses, down to cemeteries. Okay, so imagine I would go to a cemetery by myself and just look for Art Deco tombs or mausoleums, just to document and put it out there. Okay, so so I also did archival research, and then which eventually resulted to this book, okay, which was co-authored with Gerard Lico. Basically, it's the summary of that documentation that I did for NCCA. And guess what? We launched it at the Rizal Memorial Stadium after it was saved. So imagine if it was demolished, well, sana ko mag-book lunch, di ba? So ayan. So that's the result of that work that Mark just presented, okay? And we also started a social media because we wanted to bring the story out. Okay, so you can join this. It's called Art Deco Philippines, and that's where I met a lot of people who are also interested in this topic. And of course, did organized lectures and talks and fellowships, again with the Heritage Conservation Society, with other Art Deco organizations talking about Art Deco heritage in the Philippines in all its interpretation. Iba-ibang topic kasi yan eh. Okay? And of course, since I'm in the tourism industry, we create events. well, tour events. No? So we also created the first Manila Art Deco weekend. So it was one weekend of curated tours around neighborhoods here, which still had significant Art Deco buildings. So kasama dyan ang Malate, no? Because we have Rizal Memorial, we have Saint Scholastica, we have all that. And then we had a tour of the Chinese Cemetery. We had a tour of FEU and UST, both whom actually have nice Art Deco buildings, and even a day trip to Malolos. Malolos has the most beautiful Art Deco house in the country. No, it's NCT levels, I think. Okay, yeah. So yan yung mga sumama. No, so yeah, this is in Saint Scholastica in Malate. No, so we even had 4 people from Melbourne, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Sydney fly in. No, just to join these types. So again, there are serious people who actually travel for these things. And that's what they do. When you go to a tour, you take photos of details, no? Art Deco details, cabinets, railings. This is from UST, okay? And we got special access. This is at the Metropolitan Theater when she was not yet open to the public, no? So we were able to get access. We had special meals in Art Deco homes. So this was in the house of Tomas Mapua. And so while we were eating, we were also admiring the beautiful Art Deco furniture, if you notice. Ayan, no? So yung pagkain lutong bahay, set in a nice Art Deco furniture, people go wild. It's like, yung ganyan. Okay, next. Ayan. So we had a drink sessions. Now this is in Nielsen Tower. It's now the, what's that restaurant? Yeah, Blackbird, no? So again, it's Manila's only Art Deco airline-related building, okay? So yeah, so we did tours, no? Created tours that we just basically introduced people to this style and made them talk about it. To Bacolod, no, with the Museum Foundation, when I was still a trustee, we created thematic tours, this one relating to sugar. The nice thing about Art Deco is that you can relate so much local history to it. It doesn't always have to be like history of Jose Rizal. No? This talks about the history of sugar industry through design and style. Yan. And we've had people fly in and just look at Art Deco. This girl was from Australia, so sabi niya, punta ako dito, gawan mo ako ng Art Deco tour. So yan, so punta kami ng Met, punta kami ng St. Paul. And this couple came from Chicago, the United States, and they did a Manila, Malolos, Bacolod, Iloilo program. Again, just looking at Art Deco buildings, and we even visited the house of Solo. Diba? Thank you to Solo. Oh, yeah. So yeah, so people actually travel for this, no? And that's one of the ways in which Art Deco is kept alive in the travel industry. So, abangan. So that ends my talk, no? So basically, this symposium is it's a patikim, no, of what's gonna happen when we eventually open this exhibit in October. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for taking us in an Art Deco tour worldwide, Sir Ivan. So now, at this point, I invite all the speakers of the third session to the front for our panel discussion. finally, I would like to thank you again, our speakers of the third session, for such enlightening talks about on entanglements and engagements on the Art Deco movement. So, just a synthesis, no, Dr. Kate Lacson here highlighted the emergence of co-eds, reflecting the shifting roles of women during the Art Deco period. And attorney Mark Evidente showed us how to protect or save an Art Deco specimen, an architectural landmark, not only because of its Art Deco features, but also considering its values for the public, environmental values, cultural values that are all equally important in saving a heritage building. And finally, Mr. Ivan Mandi reeled us in an appreciation of various Deco destinations, Art Deco-led tourism, and this tells us and makes us, it invites us to think or reflect how we connect the Art Deco period in 1920s to 1950s today, and how we actually take this movement, it's the lifestyle then, and think about how it is still relevant now. So now I would like to invite the audience to have your questions for our speakers here. Okay, sir, the first one who raised his hand.
Thank you. Hello? Hello?
Si ma'am pala.
Hello, hello. Hi,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you.
I actually attended this lecture because I have a centenarian grandmother. When I saw na, oh, you're 100 years, that's the same age as Lola, I would probably learn something na pinagdaanan niya. But then I got more than I bargained for. So, I think I've been wanting to ask this question even on the first series, but I think perfect yung etong dito ko siya itanong. So, having learned all this about Art Deco, but Art Deco is just one of the parang, ano bang tawag doon? Parang era or like a theme, di ba, in the whole 100 years, let's say. Parang, do you think moving forward, is it important to consider or to achieve something relevant yet timeless? Meaning, can both those coexist? I mentioned relevant because it's parang, it's something that's present, halimbawa, functional. Kailangan ganito mo siya i-build because the society, ito siya, let's say, sustainability by now, di ba? Before, it wasn't considered. Di ba? It didn't exist. And timelessness, I thought about it because it's preservation of heritage or culture. Kasi ngayon, I do believe, well, nare-revive na siya, but there's this possibility na nawawala na siya. Let's say, for example, sa food. Because everything's fast-paced. So, yung kare-kare ngayon, it's not the same kare-kare as, let's say, in 1920s, 1930s. So, maaring yung definition natin ng kung gaano kasarap ang kare-kare, it's different from how it was before. Pero yun yung authentic. Same as clothes. Parang, what we know now as, let's say, saya or the patagyong, it's not the same as how it was explained earlier in a very, very detailed. So, how is it possible, and then how can we achieve that so that, let's say, the students who attended right now, who are gonna be, let's say, the future Juan Arellano or the future Nakpil, di ba? They can build or design something that would improve or at least correct whatever we learn. Kasi let's say ngayon din, the buildings, yung iba nag-iba na, napalitan na ng condo. So nawala yung value. So there, so can we really, I mean, is it something na to be considered? And is it possible to be achieved? If yes, then how?
Uh, well, yes, no. I don't need to expound a lot, no. But buildings from a particular era, not particularly Art Deco, no. If we conserve them and make them part of our lives, they are still relevant. No, case in point, the Metropolitan Theater. Okay, so it languished for about 25 years of disrepair since 1996, no? And then it was restored in about 4 years ago. And now it's very much part of the lives of our cultural lives. No? I mean, CCP is closed at this moment because they're renovating, so there are many, many events that are held there. I mean, in my travels overseas, Art Deco buildings, they're everyday things. No, in Miami, they're a hotel, they're a 7-Eleven, because they are conserved for what they are and given present relevance in the most utilitarian ways that we can think of today. The fact that they're being used and they're not in disrepair makes them relevant to our time. So,
Would you like to add in, Attorney Evidente?
Let's see. The question is a bit complex, no? So, but let me just take a shot at it. At least for built heritage, one of the main things that so for built heritage, there's really something utilitarian in it, because it's a building, it's really designed to be used in a certain way. And so if we're talking about Art Deco in that sense, what keeps a building alive is its use, right? Once a building stops being used, then it starts dying, no? I think we all, even an ordinary building, di ba, pag hindi ginagamit, it starts deteriorating faster than the deterioration that you have when you use it, no? Okay. So that's why it's also very critical that even the philosophy in conservation, no, you don't keep things frozen in a particular period. You have to a building has to keep adapting also. No? That's why we also have this concept of adaptive reuse. No? And so if as much as possible, you try to keep the building in its original purpose. No? But if it is no longer relevant in its original purpose, for whatever reason, then you try to find another purpose that is compatible. No? You could look, for example, to these churches in Europe. No? And we know, of course, the practice of faith in Europe has declined over so many years. No? But yet you have this beautiful building. And so they find a new use for it. And it still has that community orientation. No? It might be turned into a community center. It might be turned into a library, a gallery. No? So that tends to be, so it's really, the important thing is that especially if there is a community function, a community significance, to keep that kind of significance moving forward. No? So it's really about keeping the building alive, no? And useful to the community to which it belongs. Yeah.
I guess to add, as I'm a historian, that's my job, right? When you ask about timeliness and relevance, and we would always have a lot of stories in our history that would always say that it's not relevant anymore, and then it crops up again, and we don't know where to find it because it's not there anymore. So I would always say that the fight is always a good fight, for the simple reason that there will always be a time that it will be timely. But the thing is, if it's not there anymore and it's forgotten, then what do you do, right? So there will always be that. So that's just 2 cents worth from me.
Any more questions from the audience? Yes, sir, at the aisle.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm architect Brian Anashon. So, thank you for the presentations earlier. may mga baon po kaming insights and for me, even questions. So, you've been talking about the past and Sir Ivan also mentioned about the present. So, I'd like to ask naman about the future. So, I'm curious now as to, kumusta po kaya yung were there people who've approached you, everyone, about or consulted you about Art Deco for, say, an upcoming structure, new and upcoming? And if there were before and apply na now, how are the Art Deco motifs or style evident in those structures? And saan kaya yun? I'd like to ask. Thank you.
No, nobody has asked me because I am not an architect.
Consulted.
However, I think architect Gerard Lico has had some projects which were slightly sort of Art Deco-ish inspired. Mainly, it's really mainly the aesthetics, no? So they'll probably add some details here and there. Now, personally, I will not build an Art Deco style building today because there's costs involved. I will build a modern building of our time. I love Art Deco, but not to the point where I'd want to build an Art Deco building. So, no. I did have people ask me on creative aspects. Like I had one what you call this, video company, because they were doing a sort of period dish, a music video. So, like that, no.
Siguro to add, no, because I have a friend, her name is Dr. Stephanie Koo. She wrote the book Clothing the Colony, right? And we were talking about things like, what is our job aside from actually lurking in the archives and working like crazy? And when you think about it, she was like saying, mine is clothing, because that's her topic, right? Mine is women. She was saying, we are needed, especially when future, create worlds, video games. It's $1 billion business. And in order for you to actually put authenticity and a certain aesthetic to it, you need to build worlds, and sometimes those worlds come from the past. So I think in a futuristic way, because what you're asking is about futures thinking already, right? The things that we are doing right now can be added to that specific flourishing world that is very relevant right now.
Let me add lang, I did not design buildings, but I created tour programs based on Art Deco. As I mentioned a while ago, there were people who actually flew in, and because I'm a tourism professional, so they asked me to do a program. And you can only, not any travel agency can do that, because first and foremost, they don't understand what these people need. No? So again, linking to what Dr. Lacson is saying, it's creating new worlds, I guess. In my case, new experiences. So there.
Okay, Mr. Timothy.
Thank you very much for the presentations. I truly laud also the efforts of the non-governmental organizations and individual initiatives to document Art Deco. Now my question is, when it comes to fashion and design and architecture, they're very much a product of their time. They wouldn't be building Art Deco for the past. They would be building it for people of that time. And that would mean they would embody values and the culture of that particular context. In your experience dealing with these structures, how do you, what is your view of how much that shifted? Like, what is the past view of Art Deco during that time versus the present perception of those same things? How has the value shifted with regard to fashion and architecture and the idea of women, for example?
Okay, I'll just look at the women, no, for the fashion. Alam mo, I go back to what I said a while ago, and it's the chicken or the egg, because one affects the other, right? And what, for example, whatever happens, modernity happened, and therefore there are certain new opportunities that are open to women, which does not allow her to move in the traditional outfits and fashions. And so you will have no choice but to actually shift. When you think about it, it's like the movements, when we talk about movements in art, right? Every time that, when you notice the movements in art, it will always be the antithesis of what was available. And it's basically a debate, and before there's a new movement that comes in, there will be a lot of interrogations and discussions that happens in the middle. So parang pag tiningnan mo ngayon, actually, like kanina, I actually have this nice photo, no, of the skirt changing throughout the years, na parang dati dito, parang hanggang doon na, parang, I mean, of course, I'm over-exaggerate ko yun, no? But it actually also shows you, like, what Gino actually showed as well with the changes in the terno, right? That if you look at these fashions, you're not just looking at basically what they wear, but what was changing in the political, economic, social, and cultural structures of the time. So parang hindi ko ma-specify na Art Deco lang. Because at the end of the day, there were other factors that were affecting why all of these, the evolution of, for example, the dress. Right? So, pwedeng sabihin natin that yes, there was a change in the art movement that moved from Art Nouveau to Art Deco, but at the same time, nagko-collide din yun, diba? So, there's a conversation that usually happens. And then, ipapasok natin dito yung issues of politics. Naaapektuhan din nun kung ano yung isusuot mo. Lalo na kung babae ka. Naaapektuhan kung paano kaapektuhan, kung gaano kahaba ang buhok na pwede kong isuot. And I have to say that all of these things, mas sobrang apektado yung babae. Kasi during the time, men are actually already wearing Americanas, right? And that was not an issue. In fact, they found it rather great that the men were actually now wearing Western clothes. But when it came to the fashion of the women, it became such a big discussion. Interestingly enough, especially in media, the discussion wasn't controlled by women, but by men. So, hindi lang masasabi that it's just this movement because there are so many other, as a historian, no? I would say that there are so many nuances. The social factors that were happening at the time, the cultural factors, the economic factors. Ang daming nangyayari na hindi pwedeng ma-explica ng isang factor. But you can state na, if you're gonna write it, Art Deco affecting women's fashion, period of time. That would be doable. There. I hope it helped.
I'll jump in. Okay, so we'll talk about Intramuros. No? When we think about Intramuros, we normally aren't thinking of Art Deco, but because we've kind of been conditioned that it's supposed to be this Spanish colonial period city. No? But if you actually go around, you find a mismatch of buildings. No? You have informal settlements, you have Spanish colonial, you have modernist structures, you have brutalist buildings, no? It's really very rich, no? But the reason why it's that way is because you could think of it that before World War II, this was really just downtown Manila. This was just old Manila, right? But there's something special because it was within the walls. There is this social narrative about who was in, who was out, no? But it was just like any other downtown area of a city, no? It could even be said that, during the American period, no, there were some literature that the quality of the homes had already declined, no? Because many of the wealthy had already moved out, no? And so many of the homes had already been converted into boarding houses for the universities, right? Now you can see the debate on what Intramuros should be to the Filipino identity after the war. Because, of course, Intramuros was largely destroyed, 95% destroyed because of the war. And that's why you have all these new buildings and modern styles being built because, of course, people who lost their buildings during the war would start rebuilding based on the technology that was available to them. So now you had concrete, right? Okay. But even in the law, you would see that there's this back and forth in Congress in the 50s and into the 60s of what Intramuros was supposed to be. No? So some of the law said, oh, let's modernize everything. And then others say, no, let's restore, let's save the walls, let's save the historical sites, no? Fort Santiago, of course, the Manila Cathedral and all that, no? And then back and forth, back and forth. And in the meantime, so you have this stop, start of what gets rebuilt or what gets built. And you see that when you walk around Intramuros. No? So that's actually part of the story of Intramuros. No? It's not just frozen in time in the 1890s. No? So just to answer and getting back to Tong's question, no, is that there is that debate, and oftentimes that's why you do need that decision from the state, from government, from the owner, to preserve it in a certain period and a certain way, right? In this case, in Intramuros, the Intramuros administration was created in the 1970s with the mandate that Intramuros should be restored in a certain way, right? So, and I think even for, let's say if your family has an old house, no, there will always be that question also, do we want to preserve it in a certain way or change it or update it? No? Because that's, again, part of the life of the building. You have to figure out in what way was the building special and in what way should that protection save what was special, right? So, and that's part of the debate that any owner, in this case, a community or a country, no, as an owner, will have that debate on what exactly is special in a place that should be preserved or saved. No? Yeah.
Well, speaking of specialness, I think that's why it's also very important to define architectural styles and movements, because it gives identity to a particular setting. So when I was doing my documentation of old houses, I would tell people this is an Art Deco chair. And for them, before I said that, it was nothing. It was just Lola's chair. No, but when I mentioned and I pointed to them, what makes it Art Deco? Okay, so you sort of give value, no? And hopefully enough that they would preserve that chair or make something out of it and just not sell it to Facebook Marketplace, right? So, and that's one of the importance of defining historical styles, no? So, yes.
So we'll take in one last question. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, speakers. Thank you for the very rich lecture. So I would just like to ask, since Art Deco was relatively a short-lived art movement of the time, do you think that there is a possibility of a saturated resurgence in our contemporary days, locally speaking, in the Philippines? Thank you.
Sorry, saturated resurgence. Probably not in an architectural application. No, I don't think people will build in Art Deco style today, given the costs and, detailing is quite expensive in architecture, no? But at least in other aspects, like in history, in fashion, in design, where young people could, I hope, get inspiration from this long past design and maybe create something new, no? Not necessarily a copy, but inspired by, no? Which I've actually seen in some things, no? So yeah, so hopefully get inspiration from, no? To how much extent, I do not know. No, it depends maybe on the industry that you're operating in.
I just love that word, saturated resurgence, no? And then it made me think, actually. And I was like, in a world that's has got so many platforms and is rather multivocal, I think it would be interesting if we actually even see that saturated resurgence. Kasi to be able now to actually get, because I'm comm as well. Okay, so this is media and whatever. That's my other thing that I teach, no? So just to be able to actually get that type of saturated resurgence that you're talking about would mean that you have to have all the controls of the platforms, not even traditional anymore, but social media as well. And there's so many voices that are talking, so it's gonna be very challenging to be able to do that, but it would be interesting to find out if it can happen, right? So
that ends our very engaging conversation on engagements and entanglements. Thank you so much for participating in this session. So now I invite Architect Arnulfo Dado for the awarding of certificates for our guest speakers for this session, and Architect Bico to read the certificate.
Thank you so much for our presenters, Dr. Lacson, Attorney Evidente, and Mr. Ivan D. for sharing their expertise and knowledge. Now for the Certificate of Appreciation, it reads, Certificate of Appreciation is given to our resource speakers for their invaluable time and expertise as a resource person during the Making Modernity, the Art Deco Centennial Lectures 1925-2025. On May 31, 2025, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Auditorium, National Museum of Fine Arts, given this 31st day of May, 2025 at the National Museum of the Philippines, Manila. Signed, Dr. Eric B. Cerudo, Executive Director, National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and Director General Jeremy Barnes, National Museum of the Philippines. Everyone for the photo ops. Yeah, so let's, photo op. Lahatan na. Lahatan na. Pwede po. Now that concludes our speaker session for Art Deco Symposium, Making Modernity. To formally close our activity, may we invite Architect Arnulfo F. Dado, Curator and Chief of the Architectural Arts and Built Heritage Division, for a closing message on behalf of the National Museum and our partner organizations.
very short lang to. I prepared a very short, brief message. No? Okay. So, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, and patrons of the National Museum of the Philippines, pleasant afternoon. The National Museum of the Philippines is extremely grateful for your time and attention. Listening and learning from the speakers as well as the audience has enlightened me and all of us here, I'm sure, on Art Deco in the Philippines, how the artistic movement of an era evolved, developed, and shaped our Filipino way of life. Art Deco in various visual and geometric expressions have left indelible symbols exemplifying Filipino creativity, achievement, prosperity, and even excellence, and even identity. Notable examples of these are considered part of our heritage, worthy of conservation, having outstanding and exceptional artistic value, as demonstrated kanina sa Architect Evidente, historical and cultural significance to the Philippines. Today's symposium is a celebration of our renewed commitment to sustain the conservation of our heritage in general and Art Deco in particular. So we are thankful for the opportunity to have collaborated, to have been able to collaborate and work with the NCA, Museum of Foundation of the Philippines Incorporated, the Heritage Conservation Society, marami to, no? Lista, baka yung makalimutan ako. FEU, Center of the Arts, FEU Guides, the Limang Siglo, and the NMP team involved in the event for their unwavering support and making today's symposium a success. So maraming salamat po. Abangan natin yung exhibition sa October, and for sure, so maraming salamat.
A few final reminders. For the participants, maybe we request you to please answer the activity evaluation form, which you may access either by scanning the QR code, which will be posted, and on the screen, or maybe you can ask for a printed copy, which will be also be distributed. Once finished, kindly present the registration to the registration and accomplished copy of the evaluation form so you can receive your e-certificates via email. So all of the certificates will be distributed through email. Okay, and on behalf of us, the National Museum, we would like to extend our sincerest gratitude to our esteemed guests, our speakers, institutional partner organizations, participants, and attendees for making this event possible. We are ending the National Heritage Month and the Centennial of the Art Deco style as a success. For those who wish to visit the National Museum, we are open actually every day from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you once again and have a wonderful rest of the day.